Nobody accused. Fear had erased politics. A projection floated above the chamber. Sector after sector faded into darkness. Each black region represented another missing civilization. The phenomenon advances approximately 1.3 light-years every standard hour, announced High Archivist Celine. If this continues, every inhabited system on the outer spiral arm will be consumed within 11 months. Silence answered her. Then Admiral Zareth of the Dominion stood. We deploy every fleet simultaneously. Another delegate shook his head. Against what? We don't know. We'll discover it. A scientist interrupted. Every expedition sent toward the anomaly vanished before transmitting a single image. Even autonomous drones disappeared. No debris. No signals. Nothing. It was as if reality itself had swallowed them. Near the rear of the chamber sat a delegation almost everyone forgot existed. Humans. Only 3 representatives attended. Ambassador Evelyn Ross. Fleet Admiral Marcus Hale. Dr. Elias Mercer. Unlike the others, none of them appeared surprised. They watched the projection with expressions that looked disturbingly familiar. Recognition. The Keeler delegate noticed first. Why are the humans so calm? The room slowly turned toward them. High Archivist Celine addressed Ambassador Ross. Humanity has remained unusually quiet. Ross exchanged a glance with Admiral Hale. Finally she sighed. We were hoping we were wrong. The chamber froze. We're wrong about what? Dr. Mercer activated his tablet. Ancient files appeared across the central display. Old. Very old. Long before humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel. Before Earth had united. Before humans had even reached their own moon. The records came from forgotten observatories dating back centuries. Every few decades. A patch of stars vanished. The pattern matched perfectly. Exactly. No deviation. Gasps echoed around the assembly. You've known about this? Ross nodded slowly. We've known something was out there. Admiral Hale finished the sentence. We just never thought it would come this far. The delegates erupted. You concealed this? For centuries. Ross raised one hand. We didn't conceal it. You never asked. The chamber fell silent again. It was technically true. Then an elderly alien spoke. What, is it? Nobody answered immediately. Finally Admiral Hale did. We don't know its real name. But every civilization eventually gives it one. He looked around the chamber. On Earth. We called it the Dark. The word somehow made the room colder. The Dark isn't an empire. It isn't a biological species. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't conquer. It simply erases. Another delegate laughed nervously. That's impossible. So is faster-than-light travel. Hale didn't smile. A warning alarm interrupted the meeting. The tactical display flashed crimson. Emergency transmission. Outer Defense Fleet Sigma. Broken audio. Static. Then a terrified voice. It's here. Darkness swallowed half the screen. The stars behind the fleet vanished. Not exploded. Not hidden. Gone. Ships began disappearing one by one. No explosions. No debris. One moment they existed. The next. Nothing. Thousands of warships erased within seconds. The final image showed absolute blackness moving between stars. Not empty space. Something darker than space itself. Then the transmission ended. Every light inside the assembly chamber flickered. For just a fraction of a second. Every delegate thought they saw movement in the shadows around them. Panic erupted. Military leaders demanded immediate evacuation. Scientists shouted conflicting theories. Governments requested emergency jump corridors. Only the humans remained seated. Admiral Hale quietly pressed a secure communicator. Condition eclipse. The reply came instantly. No confirmation required. Hale looked toward the expanding darkness on the galactic map. His expression hardened. Confirmation came centuries ago. He stood. The species that survives the dark must become the species that fights it. Around the chamber, confused delegates watched in silence. None of them noticed Earth's classified fleet already leaving hidden shipyards. Ships that had never appeared on any galactic registry. Weapons that officially did not exist. Humanity had been preparing for this enemy for generations. Not because they believed they could defeat it. Because deep inside their oldest myths. Their oldest nightmares. Their oldest forgotten memories. Humanity had always suspected one terrifying truth. The dark wasn't arriving for the first time. It was coming back. The galactic assembly remained frozen long after the transmission ended. No one spoke. The tactical display still showed Fleet Sigma's last known position, a bright cluster of stars that had become a perfect circle of darkness. Sensors could detect nothing beyond its edge. No radiation. No debris. No gravitational distortion. It was as if that portion of the universe had been erased from existence. Then, every military database in the assembly chimed simultaneously. A new fleet had entered hyperspace. Origin, Earth. Unknown designation. Unknown commander. Unknown class. Unknown, everything. What fleet is this? Demanded Admiral Zareth. Human Ambassador Evelyn Ross answered calmly. It doesn't officially exist. Within seconds, thousands of holographic signatures filled the tactical map. Massive warships emerged from hidden jump points scattered throughout human-controlled space. They had never appeared on trade routes, military exercises, or diplomatic inspections. Their hulls were matte black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Strange silver symbols ran along their sides, not names, but warnings. Every ship carried the same insignia, a single white torch burning against a field of black. Dr. Elias Mercer spoke quietly. The Noctis fleet. The room fell silent. Noctis? Asked a delegate. It means, of the night, Mercer replied. A name chosen centuries ago. Far above Earth, buried beneath the lunar surface, the largest command center in human history came alive. Admiral Marcus Hale stepped onto the central platform. Hundreds of officers saluted. Massive holograms displayed every known sector where the dark had appeared over the last 300 years. An AI voice echoed through the chamber. Condition eclipse confirmed. Dormant protocols activated. Authorization, Omega Prime. Rows of sealed vaults unlocked. Hidden factories began assembling weapons that had not been produced in decades. Ross looked toward the stars beyond the chamber's windows. When the night begins to move, do not run. Build a bigger fire. Meanwhile, the Noctis fleet reached the edge of the expanding darkness. Every screen zoomed toward the darkness. Shapes emerged. Not ships. Not creatures. Silhouettes. They looked almost human. Yet impossibly tall. Their bodies were made entirely of shifting shadow, with dozens of glowing white eyes opening across their forms. Each step they took ignored the laws of physics, walking through empty space as though crossing solid ground. One raised an arm. 3 destroyers disappeared. Not exploded. Erased. Without a sound. The bridge became silent. Captain Ortiz whispered. "So that's what we're fighting." The answer came from Admiral Hale aboard the command station. "No." Ortiz frowned. "What do you mean?" Hale's face remained grim. "Those aren't the Dark. They're only its scouts." Every officer stared in horror. If these monsters were merely scouts, what could possibly command them? The first shadow turned toward the Dawnfire. For a brief instant, one of its countless glowing eyes locked onto Captain Ortiz. A voice echoed directly inside every human mind aboard the fleet. "Ancient. Cold. Endless. You remember us." Ortiz's blood ran cold. She had never heard that voice before. Yet somehow, it felt familiar. As though humanity had been trying to forget it for thousands of years. The scout raised its hand once more. Before it could strike, Admiral Hale gave the order every captain had hoped never to hear. "All Noctis vessels." A long pause filled every communication channel. Then came the command. "Light the darkness." Thousands of hidden human weapons powered up simultaneously, and for the first time in history, humanity's secret war against the Dark truly began. The command echoed across every encrypted human frequency. "Light the darkness." For centuries, the words had existed only inside classified contingency plans. No drills. No simulations. No one had ever expected to hear them spoken in battle. Now they became reality. Across the Noctis fleet, armored panels slid open along the hulls of thousands of warships. Instead of missile batteries or plasma cannons, enormous cylindrical arrays emerged, each lined with rings of crystal and superconductive coils. Alien observers watching through long-range probes stared in confusion. "They're not charging weapons. They're charging stars." Captain Sarah Ortiz stood on the bridge of the TSV Dawnfire as the tactical countdown reached 0. All beacon lances synchronized. Energy at 100%. Awaiting authorization. Admiral Marcus Hale's voice was calm. "Fire." The void exploded with light. Not the violent flash of an explosion, but a brilliant, steady radiance, white and gold, like the first sunrise after an endless winter. Thousands of beams converged into a single wall of light stretching millions of kilometers across space. For the first time, the darkness recoiled. The towering shadow scouts staggered backward. Their shifting forms rippled violently, and the countless white eyes covering their bodies blinked in confusion. One let out a sound unlike anything the galaxy had ever recorded. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a scream. It was grief. Deep. Ancient. Endless. The sound echoed through every communication system, bypassing speakers and vibrating directly inside living minds. Several alien crews collapsed unconscious. Human crews gritted their teeth and held their positions. "It worked," shouted Lieutenant Reyes. The tactical display confirmed it. The advance of the Dark had halted. Sections of the Black Void were actually retreating. Cheers erupted across dozens of ships. But Admiral Hale didn't celebrate. He had seen the historical projections. Every simulation ended the same way. The Dark always adapted. As if answering his thoughts, the tactical officer's face turned pale. Movement. The darkness wasn't retreating anymore. It was changing. The edge of the void began twisting into impossible geometric patterns. Stars bent around it. Space itself folded inward. Then a crack appeared. Not in the darkness. In reality. A fracture stretched across space like broken glass. From within that impossible wound, something colossal began to emerge. Every sensor immediately failed. Distance became meaningless. Some instruments claimed the object was 10 kilometers tall. Others measured it larger than a solar system. Neither reading made sense. The human AI aboard the Dawnfire spoke with unusual hesitation. Warning. Object cannot be accurately defined. Captain Ortiz nearly collapsed before forcing herself upright. The voice continued. You still carry the fire. Admiral Hale's expression hardened. Maintain formation. The communications officer whispered. Sir. It's speaking our language. No, Hale replied quietly. It's speaking every language. Back at the Galactic Assembly, panic spread once more. Entire governments demanded immediate evacuation from the core worlds. Religious leaders declared the end of existence. Military strategists admitted, for the first time in galactic history, that conventional warfare had become meaningless. Ambassador Evelyn Ross remained surprisingly composed. The Keeler delegate turned toward her. What is that thing? Ross hesitated. We don't know. You've fought it before. No. Then how can you possibly understand it? Ross looked toward the live tactical feed. We understand one thing. It remembers us. Silence followed. No one wanted to ask the obvious question. Finally someone did. Why? Ross had no answer. On the battlefield, the enormous entity lifted what resembled a hand. The surrounding darkness surged forward. Entire fleets vanished. 20 human destroyers disappeared without an explosion. A carrier simply ceased to exist. No wreckage. No distress calls. Nothing. Captain Ortiz clenched her fists. We're losing ships faster than we can fire. Admiral Hale remained calm. Initiate Phase 2. Every bridge officer turned toward him. Phase 2. No one below flag rank had expected to survive long enough to hear those words. Deep beneath Earth's surface, sealed vaults opened for the first time in nearly 2 centuries. Massive reactors awakened. Ancient machinery hummed to life. Across hidden shipyards, colossal structures detached from dry docks. They weren't warships. They were far larger. Far older. One technician stared at the emerging silhouette. I thought those were just legends. The supervising engineer shook his head. They were never legends. They were waiting. Far beyond the front lines, space-time rippled. 5 enormous objects exited hyperspace. Each was larger than a moon. Each radiated blinding white light. Instead of weapons, their surfaces were covered in millions of luminous towers, each burning like a miniature sun. Alien sensors identified no engines. No shields. No known technology. Only one designation appeared in the encrypted human database. Arc Class, Lux Aeterna. The Eternal Light. Even Admiral Hale stood as the ancient vessels appeared. Around the galaxy, every human who saw them instinctively placed a hand over their heart. Captain Ortiz whispered. I never believed they were real. They weren't supposed to be, Hale answered. The colossal entity within the darkness turned slowly toward the incoming arcs. For the first time, its expression changed. Those endless silver eyes widened. Not with anger. Not with hatred. But with something no one expected. Fear. The galaxy had never seen fear in an immortal being. Yet every sensor, every visual feed, and every witness agreed on one impossible fact. The colossal entity inside the dark had recoiled. It feared the Arc-class Lux Aeterna. For several seconds, the battlefield stood perfectly still. The endless tide of darkness stopped advancing. The shadow scouts froze where they drifted between the stars. Even the strange fractures in space ceased expanding. Captain Sarah Ortiz whispered over the fleet-wide channel. It hesitated. Admiral Marcus Hale didn't waste the opportunity. All fleets, hold formation. The arcs take point. 5 moon-sized vessels glided silently toward the front line. They had no visible engines, no glowing exhaust, and no weapons mounted along their hulls. Instead, millions of luminous towers rose from their surfaces like the spires of an impossible city, each shining with the warm light of a sunrise. Alien commanders watched in stunned silence. Those aren't warships. As the lead arc approached the edge of the darkness, a deep tone echoed across space. It wasn't transmitted through radio. It resonated through gravity itself. Every human aboard the Noctis fleet recognized the melody. Some smiled. Some quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Captain Ortiz frowned. "What is that?" An elderly crewman answered softly. "My grandmother used to hum that tune." Another officer nodded. "My father called it an old Earth lullaby." Dr. Elias Mercer, monitoring from Earth, stared at the audio analysis. "It's older than recorded history." The melody had survived thousands of years. No one knew who composed it. No one knew why generations of humans instinctively remembered it. Yet as it echoed across the void, the dark began to retreat. The colossal entity raised both arms. For the first time since its arrival, it spoke with unmistakable urgency. "Do not awaken the fire." Every human bridge fell silent. Captain Ortiz looked toward Admiral Hale's transmission. "Did it just warn us?" Hale's jaw tightened. "No." It begged. The revelation spread through the galactic assembly like wildfire. The unstoppable force consuming civilizations was pleading. The insectoid Keeler delegate stared in disbelief. "How can humanity possess something that terrifies, that?" Ross answered carefully. "We don't possess it. We inherited it." No one understood. Ross wasn't sure she understood either. Human history was filled with myths about sacred flames, eternal torches, fires that guarded civilization against the endless night. For centuries they had been dismissed as symbolic. Now, they looked more like memories. Without warning, the darkness attacked. Not with scouts. Not with erasure. The void itself surged forward. A wall of absolute black engulfed the lead arc. Every long-range sensor lost contact. The vessel disappeared completely. Alien admirals lowered their heads. "It's over. No one could survive that." Then, a single point of gold appeared inside the darkness. Tiny. Barely visible. It flickered once. Twice. Then it grew brighter. The light spread through the void like fire racing across dry grass. Blackness cracked. Entire sections of the dark split apart, revealing stars that had been hidden for centuries. One by one, constellations returned to existence. The impossible had happened. The dark was burning. A shockwave of radiant energy rolled across the battlefield. Human ships held position. Alien vessels shielded their sensors. Shadow scouts dissolved into streams of gray ash before vanishing entirely. Captain Ortiz could barely believe the tactical display. "We're pushing it back." For the first time since the crisis began. The galaxy advanced. Inside the burning darkness, the colossal entity screamed. The sound shattered moons. Asteroids cracked apart. Hyperspace rippled across entire sectors. Its countless silver eyes turned toward humanity. "You remember what you were." Every human aboard every ship felt a sudden flash. Not a dream. A memory. They saw ancient Earth beneath unfamiliar stars. Towering cities unlike anything in recorded history. Human beings standing beside beings made of living light. Great pillars of flame stretching into the heavens. Then. Darkness. War. A sky consumed by endless shadow. The vision ended. Crew members gasped for breath. No one spoke. Because every person had seen the exact same memory. Dr. Mercer stared at his monitors in horror. That's impossible. DNA scans from hundreds of thousands of humans showed synchronized neural activity. The memory hadn't been implanted. It had been unlocked. Powerful. Firekeeper protocol restored. Awaiting command. Admiral Hale stood motionless. He had spent his entire career believing the arcs were simply advanced weapons left by forgotten engineers. He was wrong. They weren't machines. They were guardians. And they had been waiting for humanity to remember who they truly were. Before Hale could answer, every alarm aboard every ship erupted. The tactical officer's face turned pale. Admiral. You need to see this. Beyond the retreating darkness. Something vastly larger was moving. The colossal entity was not the master of the dark. It was only its herald. And what was coming behind it? Blocked out an entire galaxy. No one spoke. The tactical display refused to process what its sensors were seeing. The object emerging behind the retreating darkness was too vast for the fleet computers to measure. Every calculation returned the same impossible error. Size, undefined. Stars disappeared behind it, not because it covered them, but because their light simply ceased to exist. Entire spiral arms of the galaxy dimmed as the immense presence approached. Captain Sarah Ortiz felt her breath catch. That's impossible. The AI aboard the TSV Dawnfire answered with unusual hesitation. Correction. It should be impossible. Across the Galactic Assembly, panic gave way to despair. Some delegates quietly left the chamber to send final messages to their homeworlds. Others simply stared at the holographic map, unable to accept what they were seeing. The dark that had consumed hundreds of civilizations. The entity that had erased entire fleets. The terrifying herald. It was merely the vanguard. So this is why they built the arcs. High Archivist Celine looked at her. You knew something even worse was coming? Ross slowly shook her head. No. I was afraid. On the bridge of the lead arc, the ancient voice returned. Identity confirmed. Firekeepers located. Authority restored to humanity. Admiral Marcus Hale frowned. What are firekeepers? For the first time, the Ark answered with more than a status report. Before memory. Before empires. Before stars carried life. There were two ancient forces. The bridge fell silent. One created light. One consumed it. Neither could destroy the other. Images appeared across every human display. An ancient universe. Countless civilizations. Living suns. Worlds brighter than imagination. Then the darkness arrived. Not as an army. As hunger. Where it passed, existence itself unraveled. Entire galaxies vanished into eternal night. The luminous beings who opposed it could slow its advance, but never stop it. So they created something new. Not another weapon. A species. A people capable of carrying light not merely in machines, but within themselves. They created. Whispered Dr. Mercer. Us. The Ark confirmed it. Humanity was never designed to rule the stars. Every human aboard the fleet felt the same warmth spreading through their body. It wasn't power. It wasn't energy. It felt like remembering a forgotten promise. The memories from Chapter 4 returned, this time clearer. The ancient cities. Night gave way to dawn. Stars that had been erased reappeared. Lost colonies returned. Entire sectors blinked back into existence as though waking from a nightmare. The darkness screamed, not in anger, but in defeat. It withdrew. Slowly. When asked why they alone had prepared for an enemy no one else believed existed, they always gave the same simple answer. Because when the darkness comes, someone has to carry the light. The rebuilt Galactic Assembly commissioned a monument unlike any before it. It depicted no emperor, no conqueror, no legendary warrior. Only a single human standing in the darkness, holding a small flame. Beneath it, engraved in every known language, were the words that would define humanity for the rest of history. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. They were not the most advanced. But when every other light failed, humanity became the fire that refused to die. The end.